Thank you for joining us for today's presentation, Rethinking the Classroom, Teaching Language and Culture Through Social Media and Networks, with Dr. Edward Dixon of the University of Pennsylvania. While everyone gets settled in, I'd like to take this time to tell you a little bit about IGI Global. IGI Global is a publisher of the latest research in information, computer science, and technology as applied to business and public administration, engineering, education, medical and healthcare, and social science through our books, journals, cases, and databases. You will find Dr. Dixon's research, along with hundreds of other resources dedicated to the subjects of online learning and social technologies, in our InfoSci databases, hosting InfoSci books, journals, teaching cases, as well as themed collections segmented by discipline and topic. Our InfoSci database offers thousands of course and research supplements. Currently, we are offering a 30-day free trial of our InfoSci databases, so you can experience these amazing collections for yourself. For more information, please refer to our website or contact eResources at igiglobal.com. Aristotle said, "The one exclusive sign of thorough knowledge is the power of teaching," and that is why we are here today. To get started with today's symposium, I want to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can utilize GoToWebinar software to participate in today's web event. Here we are looking at an example of the GoToWebinar attendee interface, which is made up of two parts. The viewer window on the left, which allows you to see everything the presenter will share on their screen, and the control panel is on the right. Within that control panel is how you can participate in today's event, so let's look at that first. By clicking the orange arrow, you can open and close your control panel. From the View menu, you can also set the control panel not to auto-hide when inactive if you prefer to keep it open throughout the presentation. The Audio panel provides audio information. By default, you have joined the webinar via mic and speakers. Click the Audio Setup to select your computer speaker or headset devices. Or if you prefer, you can join the audio via telephone by selecting Use Telephone. To use your telephone, enter the audio pin listed. Today's webinar will be very interactive and collaborative. We will reserve time at the end of the presentation for question and answer, but if you do have a question you'd like to ask immediately, you can type it into the question box. The GoToWebinar software also allows a hand raise button on your control panel, which you can see here, and you can use that to respond to questions asked by Dr. Dixon today. There it is. As a final reminder, today's webinar will be recorded and everyone in attendance will receive an email with a link to view the recording of today's event. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. We have with us Dr. Ed Dixon of the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Dixon is author of the article, "Building a Model for Online Distance Courses Through Social Media and Networks," which is featured in the International Journal of Virtual and Personal Learning Environments. Ed began his career at Penn as the coordinator for technology and foreign languages and has been a lecturer of German since 2002. In March 2009, he became Penn Language Center's technology director and is active in a variety of areas related to classroom instruction and faculty training with technology. Ed is past president of the Northeast Association for Language Learning and Technology, and in the summer of 2010, taught the first distance learning course in a foreign language for credit at the University of Pennsylvania. At this time, I will turn the presentation over to our guest presenter, Ed Dixon.
Okay. 1 second, please, while I'm going to turn on the video cam. We decided that seemed to work out very well. But first of all, let me welcome you all to the webinar today. And I'm going to first turn on my webcam here. And I think you might be able to see me. And now what I will do is enlarge my PowerPoint presentation so that we can begin. 1 second, please. Good. So at this point, again, let me welcome you all to the webinar today. And good afternoon. I don't know exactly where everybody is at this point in time, but it's about 2 o'clock here in Philadelphia. I'm going to start out by showing you this picture here that you see. It's the advertisement that the University of Pennsylvania uses to advertise its online courses in the summer. And when I first saw this, I thought to myself, geez, I hope the students are a little bit more serious looking than the student that's sitting on that couch there. And when I start the class, I usually have like a warm-up exercise where I talk to the students in German. And I'd like to render the exact transcript of one of the students as I was talking to the student. I asked the student, how are you doing? And the student said, I'm doing well. And she said, and you? And this is really very important. It's very important to be able to have a conversation with the students, or at least at that level, that it's not just an interrogation, so that she is responding, and you. And then I said, I'm also doing well. And where are you at the moment? And the student said, I'm at home in my living room. And then I asked, where in the living room? And she said, on the couch. So why I mention this is that I think that in an online environment, people frequently think that it's not an authentic environment. And in my experience, though, I think it's a very much authentic environment. The students are in their own habitat, and they're talking about the objects in their room that are relevant to them. So in that sense, I think the learning experience is probably more, in some instances, more authentic than the experience of being in the classroom, which sometimes seems a bit artificial. And so in my classes, I have students who are taking these courses that are in different parts of the world and different parts of the country. These are small classes. There's about 10 students in a class. But when you look at this, the 10 students in this classroom, they are all taking the class in different parts of the country and the world, as I said. So that when a student in China talks about, if I ask how is the weather, the response is really quite relevant to that student. They're talking about the weather as it is affecting them at that moment. And what I'm finding is that the students are more interested about hearing from each other's own experiences at that moment, rather than, for instance, describing objects in a textbook. So, and to me, the textbook tends to be a little bit more artificial than the picture that you see right here. So these are things that I really am trying to explore more about, how to make the online experience a very authentic experience. Now, I want to move on a little bit here. We're seeing a lot of different approaches about online teaching, and they range anywhere from just simply being a didactic lecture to to game playing. But the courses that we teach tend to be more of have a social component in it. That interaction between the instructor and interaction between the students, both written and oral, tends to be the model that we've sort of been using for these courses. And I'll explain to you that model in just a little bit. However, now, I mean, this is kind of outdated. We're seeing now MOOCs appearing. And where we are here at the University of Pennsylvania, I'm sure most of you or all of you may have heard about Coursera. And so MOOCs are very much conversation on this campus. And we're looking at ways of transforming these small classrooms perhaps into larger classrooms over the next couple of months. Okay, so moving along here. If you want to ask questions, please, you can post them in the text box. I think I can see them. 1 second, if I can turn this on here. I will field the questions, and if I don't answer them immediately, then please ask them again at the end of our session. Okay, let me move on here a little bit. Okay, I just wanted to give you an idea of where we were. In 2010, we had one course. I offered one course. It was the first online course in German for credit at the University of Pennsylvania. And there were 8 students in the class, and they were anywhere from New York, again, to China. And summer of 2011, we had 16 students, and they were also all over the country and all over the world, as you can see here. And in last year, 2012, we had 12 students taking the courses, and they were not around the world, but they were from around the country, anywhere from New York to Los Angeles to Toronto. Now, again, we started out with this course with the idea, I guess there's a lot of reasons for doing online courses, and I'm sure you all know these reasons, and they can be anywhere from financial considerations where, you know, schools are trying to cut back on programs and trying to replace you know, classes with one online class, or there might be other reasons, which I think is a very good reason. The next one is providing disadvantaged students access to language education, and this is where we see MOOCs filling that need. Now, at Penn, though, we started out, we wanted to also try out online teaching, to be quite honest, and I had been teaching for 10 years and doing sort of like or 8 years at that time, doing blended learning and with MOOCs and, I mean not with MOOCs, but with blogs and wikis and Facebook and those kinds of things, and Blackboard. And the next step was actually to move over to turning the course into a fully online course. And so we looked at the summer courses that we teach, and we frequently don't have enrollments in those courses. So we decided to offer a summer course to Penn students who could not be on campus in the summer. And since then, we've been able to offer this German course for the past 3 summers, and now going into our 4th summer. And since then, it's taken off. And this summer, we're now going to be offering 11 courses. We did last year also Arabic and Chinese. This year, we're going to be adding also Italian, Korean, and Slavic. We've done, you have to excuse me, I live in, my office is right downtown in Philadelphia, and you'll be hearing sometimes sirens pass through. My apologies for that. I wanted to say we've offered in the past, though, Haitian Creole, and we've also offered Turkish. Now, what is the delivery system that we use? And the delivery system is really quite basic. We use Adobe Connect, which is a synchronous sort of online classroom. We use Blackboard, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Its tools, which include Wimba, blogs and wikis that are inside of the Blackboard suite. And then we also use Facebook and then Google Docs. This is what I use. Some teachers will be using different tools as well. We go through training with these teachers in the newbies who are going to be teaching for the first time, but we also want our teachers to be able to experiment. We've developed sort of a model here, but it's not the absolute model. We're encouraging sort of variations on that, and so you'll find teachers using different tools. We're moving, for example, from for the summer courses from Blackboard to Canvas, and I'll be doing the same thing. So some people will be staying with Blackboard, but we're always looking for, you know, new ways of doing things. Now, this is what the Blackboard site looks like currently. You'll see here on the left, on the left you'll see links to all of the different content areas that are in Blackboard. And everything that the students use in the course is available to them in Blackboard, so that if they forget the link to Adobe Connect, it is right there in Blackboard. The textbook that we use is Deutsch Interactive. It's a very good program by the Deutsche Welle. And then all the vocabulary is there, dictionaries are there, how to create umlauts, the blogs, the wikis, the course documents, or the PowerPoints, the worksheets, and all the other reading assignments that we have are inside of Blackboard. Now, this is Deutsch Interactive. I do want to explain to you what it looks like. This is the program that we use. It's designed basically for learning, for listening and reading. And it provides sort of an overview of social issues, cultural issues in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. And this is, it has video components, so it's very good for listening. There are reading sections. And so it's very good for those two skills. However, what I need to do is to repurpose this material so that students are using it with each other, are using sort of the topics from Deutsch Interactive as discussion points. And so in an online classroom, what I will do is I will take images from Deutsch Interactive, sort of in the presentation mode, and I will ask the students about who is this person, and then I might ask them, who are you? So I try to personalize it, and it becomes more where they're describing their own personal identities, but at the same time they're learning to describe the characters that they are hearing about and reading about in Deutsch Interactive. Now, by the end of Deutsch Interactive, as far as reading and listening is concerned, these are the can-do statements that they're supposed to be able to fulfill. They're able to understand the main points of clear standard input on familiar matters. They can deal with most situations likely to arise whilst traveling. They can produce simple connected text on topics which are familiar or of personal interest, and they can describe experiences and events, some dreams, hopes, and ambitions, and briefly give reasons and explanations for some of the opinions that they have. Now, so this is what we expect them to be able to do by the end of the 12 weeks, which is 2 semesters of German 101 and 102. I'm going to be showing you examples of the things that they can do. And I wanted to mention, though, that the students are able to get to this point in 12 weeks, and it's interesting to sort of compare that with what they are doing in 2 semesters, sort of in a fall semester and in a spring semester. So what we're looking at here also is how quickly they are learning in this kind of environment. And as I was saying earlier, that the reason why we originally offered this course was to provide students, Penn students, and also these courses have open enrollments in the summertime, so students from anywhere around the world can take these courses. But for the Penn students, we wanted to be able to provide them the opportunity to take a language for Penn credit in the summer when they're not here on campus. However, now we're looking at also the pedagogical opportunities that these online environments offer. So it's not simply just simply practical reasons, but there are also very pedagogical reasons that we're looking at for these courses. Now, I want to show you what the syllabus looks like for this course. This is a syllabus or an entry for from one day. Excuse me while I take just a sip of water here. And what I did here is, again, is I repurposed the materials from Deutsch Interactive and focused on what the students need to know to be able to converse with each other on topics of getting to know each other, where they come from. And so what I do is I isolate the vocabulary that they need to know, the grammar points that they need to know in order to use the grammar and the vocabulary to identify themselves in conversations that are both written and oral. So this is an example from the first day. And what happens here, though, is that the syllabus is more than just an outline of what we will be doing. I've designed it in a way that it's almost like a lesson plan. And what I'm finding out in the online classroom, it's very important to keep the students on task. And so every opportunity that I have to keep them on task, to not only just go through the Deutsch Interactive, but to focus on what it is that's most important in Deutsch Interactive. And I try to do that through the syllabus, and then I send them reminders almost for every class, after every class session, in an email, what it is that is expected of them for the next day, and also what the homework expectations are. So one of the things that I've learned in this from teaching online is that it's very important to keep the students on task. If there are any questions, I wanted to ask while we're all here, how many of you have taught online? There's a little baseball button, a mitt. There's a baseball mitt at the top there, and it's under the attendee list. And I think if you click there, you'll be able to participate sort of in this poll. So I don't know, I can't see. So Ann, can you see how many people have responded? I see Karen and a few others. Renata, good, great.
Yeah.
Good. Now I can see that. Thank you. All right, so now I'm going to move on to the syllabus, from the syllabus to the evaluation. How do we evaluate the students? Well, now I was mentioning that Deutsch Interactive has a lot of interactive, or maybe I did mention, it has a lot of interactive exercises. And the students can take these exercises as often as they want. They're designed simply for practice to give them an idea if they're able to move on to the next level or to the next exercise. So they can repeat this as often as they want. And I really found this quite interesting because of the fact that in an online, in a classroom, if we give traditional testing, the score is based on the number of errors that they make. We tally those errors, and then we deduct that from sort of like 100 points or whatever, and then then they get their grade. So I decided that since Deutsch Interactive takes care of that for me, I'm going to use a different kind of assessment. And what I do here in this assessment is that it's based mostly on their performance, through their oral performance and their written performance. So what we've sort of came up with here is sort of a portfolio kind of assessment. So the class participation is worth 200 points. The homeworks are worth 200. There's 5 essays that are worth 200 points. There are practice interviews with me, and then there is a presentation in the Wimba voice boards, and then there's a final interview. And I have the interviews done by Christina Frey, who is the director of the program, so that it's not me telling the German department that the students can do this. And so Christina interviews the students at the end of the two summer sessions. She actually interviews them also at the end of the first session and the second session to give a sort of more objective evaluation of where the students are at the end of the first session and second session. Sort of like an external evaluator. Now, let me move on here. How do I organize the online class? What are the strategies that I use? And it's all happening in Adobe Connect. It's all synchronous. Adobe Connect provides a PowerPoint, ability to display PowerPoint, the ability to do chats, written chats and oral chats, to share the screen, to send students links and so forth. So it's it can be a very interactive tool. So what I do basically at the very beginning of the session is to provide an in-class presentation of concepts. And then the second part of it is the in-class sort of structured activities with me, where the students are interacting with me on the topics and the grammar points that I just presented to them in the online class. And then what the students do, what we might do in a regular classroom is put them into groups, student groups, and the students are interacting with each other in written chats and then in oral chats. And then they go home and then they do I have your out-of-class asynchronous activities. However, they're not just asynchronous activities. Some of them, are also synchronous activities because they meet with me once a week at the end of the week, and I give them a 20-minute sort of interview, and we discuss different topics that we covered in the week before. So the point that I want to make here is that the exercises that the students do at home are more aligned with what the students do in the classroom. So they're not just doing workbook exercises. I mean, workbook exercises are great for self-study, but they're not really very ideal for promoting conversational skills or for writing. So for writing essays, for example. So what is designed here is sort of out-of-class activities that are more aligned with what we do in class. And the students can also see each other's work as they can also in the online classroom. So there's a lot of peer review that goes on inside the classroom. And as I mentioned, the work that they're doing in the homework assignments are more of a constructivist kind of approach. So, and as I said, it's sort of a portfolio, so that throughout the sessions, the students can see what their output was at the beginning of the first week, whereas what was their output like at the end of the 12 weeks. And they they can see their progress from week 1 to week 12. I haven't seen any questions yet, so if there are any, please feel free to ask. Now, moving on, so this is the cycle. And I wanted to say the cycle number 1 is I am now trying to develop a way through flipping the classroom that will eliminate the presentation mode completely. So because what the idea here is that we'll start with number 2. And that's what I'm hoping we'll be able to begin with this summer. And the idea would be is that we can hit the ground running when we start the session so that there's no presentation. It's simply practice. Practice with the language. The focus will be on using the language, not on studying the language, but rather using the language. So that is the goal for the next sort of stage, the next level of this model. Now, so what does the Adobe Connect look like? So here's an example where I might be introducing the the topic of a German breakfast, and here I'll be asking the students certain questions about what they like for breakfast, and they will be responding in the chat box directly below the PowerPoint. And if they don't understand something, they can also post a question inside of that chat box, and then I can give them feedback. However, they can also reply orally. So while one student might be replying in a written format, other students might be raising their hand to respond verbally. Now, what I've found here in the online classroom is that everybody is responding in one way or another. So if a student is not responding orally, the student is responding in a written format. So what I'm finding here is that there is a maximization of participation. And as I became aware of that, I require that the students all try to respond in one way or another. And so what happens to it moves very, very quickly. I think we're finding out that in the beginning I let students respond in the format that they feel most comfortable in. And I think the comfort zone of students in online classes tends to be probably a little bit better. And these are all things that we need to research on, but certain researchers are already talking about how in online environments students tend to be a little bit more relaxed. And I think what I'm finding is that students tend to volunteer more information. Again, this is all anecdotal, and we need to do research to decide whether or not students' comfort level are better. Now, not just are we talking about the very typical topics of what do you like to eat, where do you live, what's your name, but as the course progresses, we're talking more about some content. And in this particular session, we're talking about homelessness in Germany. So we cover a large range of anywhere from grammatical points to topics to social issues. So it's not. I think the course has a lot of depth to it at the same time. Now, one thing though that was a little bit that I had to do extra work for the course is that since Deutsch Interactive is online, the students had no textbook in front of them, and so as part of repurposing Deutsch Interactive, I had to come up with worksheets that reflected what the students were learning and what we were going to be doing in that particular day. So in day 1, they're learning how to greet each other, and I've always designed it in such a way that it's question and answer, right? So that they're asking each other questions and giving answers, and they're then reversing the roles and finding out information about themselves. So actually, and I found this to be a very good strategy, and to be able to customize and focus in on what it is that they need to know in order to have a conversation. So I'm finding I'm doing the same thing now in my face-to-face classrooms, where I'm coming up with worksheets that they will use to practice conversations. And I found it to be pretty effective. It keeps the pace going quickly and keeps the students on task. So I find these worksheets to be very helpful, and I'm also, not only am I learning from from what I do in the face-to-face classroom, because these courses are based on communicative language teaching and what we do in the face-to-face courses. But I'm also finding that I'm learning things from the online class and bringing them into the face-to-face classroom. So when are we talking about the chats, when the students are interacting with each other in the chats? So what I will do is I will bring up these chat windows here. That's the beauty of Adobe Connect. So I have these chat windows here, and I will assign students to each chat window, and then they will converse on the topics that we were just that I was interacting with them on. So this is what it will look like. So you'll see here where the students are interacting with each other, and the really interesting part about this is that they're able to see each other's work. And so if I notice that some students are lagging behind a bit, I will tell them or ask them to look at each other's dialogues and to get ideas from each other for these dialogues. And it becomes very collaborative. And as their conversations are progressing, I am looking at their conversations, and I'm giving them feedback. Most of my feedback is oral feedback as they are writing. Okay, so this is something that I can't do in the online classroom. In the face-to-face classroom, I can't have all the students working on something and I can see it happening at the same time. Even when I have them in group work, I have to walk around to different groups. But in this environment, I can see, at least in the written environment, I can see what they are doing, and they can also see what each other is doing. Now, the next step in all of this, so they've gone through this cycle. The cycle is progressing right now, where they've interacted with me. Now they've started interacting with each other in written format. Then what I do is I can't show you this right now because there's nobody in the rooms right now. But they move then into the oral chat rooms, and in the oral chat rooms, I put them again into groups. And although I can't hear all of them at the same time, I can move around into different groups and hear what it is that they're doing. What I'm really interested in finding out is whether or not this progression, going from interacting with me to doing the written chats, prepares them better for interacting with each other in conversation, in oral conversation. So does the written conversation help them to remember forms, to remember vocabulary that they're going to practice again in the oral conversations? So we need to do some comparisons there. Now now again, I'm going to move into the homework. So I hope that is all pretty clear how that cycle works. Now we're coming into the last part of the cycle where the students do homework assignments, and the homework assignments are aligned with what we've been just doing in the classroom. So I use Wimba voice boards. I don't know, how many of you use Wimba? Do many of you use Wimba or some kind of voice tool with your students as part of the homework assignments? I'd be curious to find out. So it looks like a few of you do. That's interesting. And so I find Wimba to be or these voice boards to be a very valuable part, especially the online classroom, where if I'm practicing with the students, what's your name, where you come from day one, this is what I'm asking them. Individual questions of where they come from, what they do. And you may be asking yourself, boy, that's a lot to listen to at the end of the day. And how do I provide them with feedback? And the way in which I provide students with feedback in most instances, be it essays, be it the Wimba voice boards, be it the Google Docs, what I normally do initially is to listen to everyone's work or read everyone's work and look for the main errors that are occurring. And then what I will do is the next day in class, I will go over with the students the most reoccurring errors that they are making, and then I will ask them if it's with respect to written work, to go back, look at their work, and then to self-correct. So my goal here is not to test them on discrete items in a test, but rather for them to look at their own work and to evaluate it themselves to see whether or not what we have just gone over in class, the feedback that I've given them, it fits or is up to par with what we had just discussed in terms of the feedback. So a lot of this is self-correction, and also for them to keep in mind what what are the correct forms to use in the future when they're writing in essays or when they are speaking. Now, another tool that I use with the students is Facebook. So in Facebook, I ask them, this is after day one. This is after the first class, which you're looking at right here in the online classroom. So in the online classroom, I ask them to pull it all together, to tell me who they are, where they come from, what languages they speak, and how often we might have German. So this is an example of what they're doing after the first day of class. Now, when I first did this, you're able to see me, but in the class that I teach online, when I have the camera on, the students in the first summer that I taught told me that the camera was a distraction. So we didn't use the camera at all, and they didn't see each other either. So Facebook provided them at least a visual for the students to identify their classmates. However, over the course of time, I find that there may be no physical presence, but the students are developing a social presence, and they're doing that social presence through a lot of writing, through a lot of speaking. So they're able to get to know each other through through writing and also through speaking. Okay, so here's an example of how the students get to know each other, and I think it's also things that I think about when I'm now in the face-to-face classroom. How do I help the students develop more of a social presence when they are in the classroom? Now, I carry over Facebook now into the face-to-face classroom, and again, I'm finding out ways to use Facebook that I do in the face-to-face classroom and bring it over into then the online classroom. So they feed into each other. And what I found interesting here is that the students, after day one in the face-to-face classroom, are pretty much doing the same activity, the same expressions, using the same expressions as the students would be in the online classroom. So we have to also start to compare what it is what is their output in the online classroom, what is their output in the face-to-face classroom. However, I will say this one thing. I know also what the students need to be able to do in order to go into the next level, to go into the intermediate level of German. And we don't have an online intermediate level yet. So many of the students that are taking the German 101 and 102 in the summer will continue, though, in the fall in the 101 and the 103 class, in the intermediate level. So students are not only transitioning from an elementary to an intermediate level, but these students are transitioning also from an online level to a face-to-face level. And the students have been able to fare quite well in the face-to-face class as they were making this transition. Some better than others, but that's also my experience in the online classroom, where you have students who are more motivated than others. Now, the other I'm going to skip here, but as the semester continues, students are using different tenses, they're using different vocabulary, and here's an example where the students are talking about their weekend and they're doing it in the past tense. Now, let me move on here because I think we're sort of running out of time here. But let me show you this right here. This is their first essay from the online class, or an example from the first essay. So the students are talking about where they come from, where they live, who they live with. They talk about their parents, their teachers, what they like to do, what languages they speak. So again, we might be practicing this in the Wimba voice boards in isolated questions and answers, but in the essays that they're writing, the blog essays, they are putting it all together. And again, they can read each other's essays. They know what the linguistic capabilities are of their classmates. And then what I will normally do is I will provide them with the key. After I've asked them to do self-correction, I will provide them with the key, and after the errors, I will put the abbreviation from that key to indicate what they need to correct. So, but by the end of the 12 weeks, by the end of the 12 weeks, the students are not only talking about themselves, but we had just read a short story called Elisa, and for this final essay, I asked them to project themselves into the personality of Elisa and to retell her story. And it's a story about an elderly woman who has experienced all of the events that took place in Germany in the last century, going from the economic crisis all the way up to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the reunification. So what I want them to do is to talk about themselves from the perspective of Lisa in the story. So this is what they're able to do in a paragraph at the end of the 12 weeks. Now, some statistics here. What do I find the students are doing the most when they're going into Blackboard? Well, 16% of the time they're writing the blogs, and 28% of the time they're doing the Wimba voice boards. And this is exactly what I want to see, is that they're using a lot of these tools to produce their own content, and this is exactly what I'm looking for when the students are doing their homework assignments. Now after every 2 weeks, I do a practice interview, although I meet with them every week, but I give them a grade 3 times during the semester on the interviews that we conduct with them. So there's 3 interviews, and I said I do the first 2, and this is what we look for at the end, basically, of the 101 session, that there's pragmatic competence, that there's accuracy, that there is also a good use of the vocabulary, that the grammar is accurate, and we also look at their pronunciation. So these are all very important in the final interview, these items right here that you're looking at. So what can the students do after 2 weeks? Okay, so after 2 weeks, the students are able to do greetings, provide a little bit of background information, talk about where they live, a little bit about their profession, their studies, free time, about their likes and dislikes. They're able to use the present tense, basic word order, separable prefixes. They're able to recycle vocabulary that they're learning from Deutsch Interactive. But what I also find is that they're self-learning new vocabulary. And this happens in the face-to-face classroom, but it's also happening in the online classroom. Now, I just wanted to give you an example very quickly of what this is a transcript from part of the interview that I did with a student. She starts out, "Hello, Mr. Dixon." I say, "How are you doing?" She said, "I'm doing well." "I'm also doing well, thank you." "Where are you at the moment?" She said, "I'm in New Jersey." "Where do you come from?" She's like, "Come from New Jersey." "What is the town called?" "Medford." "Is Medford your home?" She says, "Yes, Medford is my home." "Is Medford big or small?" I'm asking these kinds of questions. She says, "Medford is very small." She emphasizes that. "Do you have a profession? Do you work?" I ask her. She said, "Yes, I work as administrative assistant." This is a word that she had to look up, administrative assistant. This is not something that comes out of Deutsch Interactive, Verwaltungsassistenten. Then I asked, "Where do you work?" And she works here in the summer at the university. Then I ask her, "Are you a student?" She says, "Yes, I am." And I said, "What are you learning this summer?" She says, "This summer I'm learning German." I say, "Do you like to learn German?" She says, "Yes, I like to learn German." "Which languages do you speak?" She says, "I speak English, Latin, Greek, and a little German." "Well, what do you like to do?" She says, "I like to go to the movies, and I like to watch TV. I like to garden." And in this sentence here, she's using separable prefixes, and she's also looking up her own vocabulary. She uses the word Gärtnere, and then I asked her, "Oh, you like to work in the garden?" And she says, "Yes, I like to work in the garden." It goes on, but I just wanted to give you an example of what the students are able to produce orally when they are in this kind of, when they were doing an interview with me after 2 weeks. Now, what I'm trying to do now is that this sounds to me, when I look at this and I listen to it, more like an interrogation. So what I want now the students to try to develop strategies where it is more like a conversation. So now I want the students to start asking me questions after I ask a question, so that it develops more in the flow of a conversation rather than sounding more like an interrogation. Now I want to go on to the evaluations of the course. We're getting closer to the end here. A 4.0 is the highest that you can get for a course, and the evaluations for the course are quite high. This is the official evaluation that the student takes at the end of the session, at the end of this summer session. So they rate the course pretty high. They rate the instructor high. and this feedback from the students is very important, but what is also very important is the commentary that they write. So I'll go over a couple of these. One student writes, this is in 210, I didn't expect to enjoy the online aspect, but I found quickly that in addition to the obvious benefits, such as the ability to be mobile and travel without missing class, I actually thought it was easier to concentrate without the typical distractions of the traditional classroom. So the traditional, perhaps what she's referring to is actually the physical presence of everybody in the classroom. That needs to be looked at. One student wrote, I was a little apprehensive at first taking an immersion style course. I didn't call it immersion, but she felt that it was. It was very interactive, lots of participation going on. But this method of teaching really seems to work. The online format is perfect for students who cannot attend an in-person class. It is on par with, if not better, than other introductory language courses I have taken in the classroom. The homework, the short stories, and in-class exercises were all great. Taking this class is sincerely one of my most memorable experiences at Penn. So what I find here very interesting is that the homework, the short stories, and the in-class exercises, this student puts it all together, doesn't look at the homework, the short stories, or is at least referring to this, that it's not all separate. These are all sort of the homework and the online activities that we're doing in the in-class sessions are all related. And this is what part of the goal is that the students experience the language that they're learning in class and at home at a same level, at an equal level. Overall, the course was great. It was well structured, and although the course may appear at times unstructured with regards to students interacting with each other, a lot of interaction, seems a little bit chaotic at times. There's a reason for all that kind of madness. Now, I'm going to skip over this, but maybe I'll just look at this one here to give you an idea of what the students feel they like the most, where they're learning some culture. The student says, my favorite part of the class was reading Die Lisa. That was a story, children's story that they were working with, and the short stories. They provided some German history and culture, which was very interesting and helped spur my desire to learn the language. It was great to be able to practice reading real German in the course. So the students felt they're learning culture, they're practicing real German in the course, and has given me the foundation to work my way through German newspapers and articles. Okay, what are the outcomes? We're getting up to the very end, and so it's a shift from the private to a more public learning space. It's not just student and teacher, but it's actually the students can see each other's work. It's very peer oriented, community-oriented, less teacher-centered and more community-centered, which I was just explaining, extensive collaboration and participation. There's learning for meaningful and effective communication rather than for passing chapter tests and unit exams. And then, there's more opportunities for self-correction, self-reflection, and peer learning. Out-of-class activities aligned more closely with in-class activities. More authentic learning of structures by introducing them as the students need them for conversation and communication. So I just wanted to mention I'm not adhering to a textbook and have to follow certain grammatical points, although Deutsch Interactive is presenting them in a very structured way as textbooks do. But since I am not totally adhering or making the students responsible for these grammatical points in a test, I can introduce to them new structures that they want to learn as they need them when they want to converse with each other. The other thing is a non-threatening learning environment. That's what I mentioned a little bit earlier. And I think that brings us to a close. Again, this is the article that I wrote. If you wanted to find out more about it, it's and I think Anne was referring to it earlier. And I guess at this point we can take questions. And let me hand it over to Anne.
Perfect. Okay, so we had several questions as we were going along. So just let me know if these are taken out of context. If anybody wants to specify, feel free to submit an additional question to support it. So one of our first questions are you talking exclusively about synchronous e-learning? Unfortunately, these have been outlawed at my university. We are only allowed to teach online asynchronously.
Well, I'm really sorry that I missed your questions. I didn't see them here posted. And this is synchronous and asynchronous. And my feeling is that Synchronous learning is very important because of the fact that students learn the language by using it. So social practice to me is a very important aspect of for learning a language. I don't know how to get around that if it's outlawed. However, again, there is another side of the course that is asynchronous, such as the blogs, such as the Facebook. That is all asynchronous.
Okay. How much does the... Wait, I'm sorry, I missed one. How successful have you been with the attendance in synchronous sessions?
Well, the students are obligated to attend. It's part of the participation. And if they don't, they miss I think we allow them to miss 2 classes. If they miss over 2 classes, then the grade drops by a notch. So it automatically drops, but it affects also their participation. So in that sense, participation tends to be quite good.
Perfect. That was Joceline's question, and she also goes on to say, what are some difficulties? Time zones, Adobe Connect, technology, bandwidth?
Right. That's a really good question. And the most what I'm finding is that if the students have a good internet connection, and if they do what they're supposed to do in terms of having a headset and also go through the wizard, the audio wizard, we don't have a problem. However, if they're not using a good internet connection, then they're responsible for finding a computer with a good internet connection. So Adobe tends to be the problem. A lot of the problems are based on user issues, where the student might not be having a microphone. So to avoid those kinds of problems during the class session, I meet with the students a week before the class starts, and we go through all the technical issues that could occur and how they can remedy those issues before they come to class. Now, I will also point out that I'm very fortunate that during my class instructions, I have a technician on hand who will be working with the students at least during the first half of the session to help the students with the technology. But after the first class or two, if they know what they're supposed to be doing, then there are few issues. There are few issues then with the technology.
Perfect. May Alte asks, how much does the semester cost, and do learners see each other online?
How much does it cost? Okay, it's a regular Penn credit course, and those courses are over $3,000. So these students are expecting, a good product, and so this is always in the back of my mind that they are expecting a good product. And even though it's expensive, we try to deliver. Do they see each other online? No, they don't. In fact, as I mentioned a little earlier, that when we were using the camera, the first time that I did it, the students asked me to turn off the camera. I asked them, is this valuable for the learning experience? And they said no. And so what I'm finding out, though, since there is not, again, this visual presence, they're concentrating mostly on interacting with each other, in a written format and in a spoken format, and that's how they're developing their social presence and not a physical presence.
Joceline goes on to say, you've had small groups. Do you see this scalable to larger groups as well?
Yes, I do. I am thinking about this quite a bit right now, and I'm hoping to talk about the possibilities of how to transform this kind of environment into a larger one for MOOCs, and I'm sure you're all familiar with that. It will be different, but the whole purpose of this of this course here is to find out what works in terms of the social interaction. So what needs to be integrated into a MOOC is the social interaction. And I think there's a way of doing it, not in the same fashion, but in a similar way.
Marco asked, how do you promote reflection on students?
Well, in terms of self-reflection, what I want the students to be able, in terms of their accuracy, in terms of their output, what I normally do is through the feedback, I indicate to them what I want them to be looking for in their essays. Where are the errors? Where are the recurring errors? So that the students, based on my feedback, will go back to their work and then self-correct. And it's not just to self-correct that one essay, but to think about future essays that they are writing so that they will avoid the same error that they were making previously. I hope that answers your question, Marco.
Renee asks, why not a textbook? Delivery mode does not negate the use of a textbook.
No, it does not. It absolutely does not. And there was a reason why I deliberately chose not to use a textbook. Frequently, students will evaluate a course based on how the teacher uses the textbook. And that doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it happens. So I didn't want to find myself in a situation that the student was evaluating the online course based on how I was using the textbook, because to be quite honestly, the textbook is only there as a basis for the discussions and the grammar and the vocabulary. So you can use a textbook and you can repurpose a textbook for the online course, but I didn't want to run the risk of having a student evaluate the course based on how I was using the textbook, because in the online class, again, the most important focus is the focus on the students using the language rather than studying the language from a textbook.
Judy Franz says, are the chats the social media component referenced in the presentation title? You're not using other social media like Twitter, Tumblr, etc.
No, I don't. And I'll tell you, I mean, I could use Twitter. The students are already using quite a bit of technology. I mean, they're using the blogs and the wikis and the Google Docs. They're using Facebook and so forth. So, I mean, I could use Twitter, but I have to sort of carefully use the technologies. I don't want to overburden them with too much. Right now, this seems to be the perfect balance between the technology and the content. But again, I think that as Ian Langshire points out, that the interaction is the most important part of an online class. I mean, content is important too, of course, but it's the interaction. So all of these different tools here are used to promote interaction and social practice.
Ed Bruning asked that you explain the Wimba voice tool.
Yes. How do I use it? Okay, so I use it in different ways. One is to simply review the grammar and the topics that we were just practicing in class. So again, I might ask individual questions, usually about 10 questions on like day one might be, what's your name, where do you come from, what language do you speak, where do you live, those kinds of questions, and they're individual questions. However, as time goes on, I will ask, we will be reading short stories, or we might be reading text from Deutsch Interactive or listening conversations, and I will be posting questions about the short stories that we're reading, about what they're listening to in Deutsch Interactive. So then the questions are more content focused rather than asking them questions about their personal identities. So there's a balance between and that's how I find out whether they're doing the work, to tell you the truth, that and they get a Wimba assignment every day. So I will know whether or not they're doing the reading assignments, doing the listening assignments, when I post Wimba questions about the content from those listening assignments and from those reading assignments. So, and I might also ask them to read a text we watch video clips of movies, and I might ask them to reenact that video clip, and I will check them for pronunciation. So it's used for pronunciation, content, and also for developing their personal identities.
Perfect. Adelaida asks, How do you give feedback in chats? Do you interrupt the conversation or wait for everyone to finish their dialogue? Which is better?
Good question. I find out that I do it while they're writing. And frequently, I mean, they're all hearing me give feedback. But at the same time, the feedback sometimes applies to everybody's chat. So even though one student might be making, I notice, might be making that particular error, the students start thinking also about what they're writing. So I don't find it has never been in the past 3 years a problem for me to respond to one student while everyone hears the feedback. So I don't wait till the end.
Perfect. Mohammed asks, how do you assess the higher level learning outcome, and how about the learning style?
The higher level outcomes. Now, I hope I can understand this. Well, the idea here is, and I hope I answered this question correctly, I need to get the students to a point where they're able to deal with more difficult texts than what they would find, for instance, in a textbook or in Deutsch Interactive. So the short stories are at the end of we're reading a short story by Bertolt Brecht and maybe by Heinrich Böll. So this is their ability to work with these kinds of texts, to answer questions about these texts, to write about them, is sort of my feedback, their feedback to me, that they're able to work with higher level materials. And also, are they able to go on to the next level? Are they able, in the final interview, the final oral interview, are they able to meet the requirements that are going to enable them to participate at the intermediate level? So at the very end, we're looking at, are they able to work with more difficult texts? Will they be able to survive, at the intermediate level and in the face-to-face courses? So again, it is based on assessing their output, and rather than testing them in a traditional test. I hope that answers your question, Mohammed.
Okay. How do you feel about your workload for online versus face-to-face classes?
Oh, that's a good question. The first year I did this, I will tell you that I was, how can I best explain this? I was living and breathing the course. I was getting up in the morning, starting to prepare for it. The courses take place on Mondays through Thursdays from 7:30 to 9, and I will tell you I was working beyond the time when the course finished. Students send me emails, but the first year was quite difficult because it was evolving. The course, the model itself was evolving. There wasn't any sort of model that I had. I was working with the technology. I had the goal in mind. I knew what the students needed to do. They needed to be able to speak, to write, as well as to go through the reading and listening exercises in Deutsch Interactive. So the first year was quite difficult. The second year became easier. The third year, because I have everything ready to go, but it doesn't mean that I just redid what I did the year before, but I already did what I did the year before, but I actually, repurposed a lot of it based on what my experiences were in previous years. So in the beginning, it was very time-consuming, but less time-consuming as the years go on. However, I also find myself doing a lot of preparation for the face-to-face classroom right now, and I think it's about the same that I would spend on both the online classroom and the face-to-face classroom. And I will tell you this, that since I have had the experience of teaching online, I'm also starting to repurpose the things that I would do in the face-to-face classroom, which involves time too.
Valentina asks, I was wondering why not involve intermediate level students into the basic course as mentors for their peers, or even possibly collaborate?
That's a good question. I mean, we it would be probably a little bit difficult in the summer to have the intermediate students involved. However, what I've been looking at is ways of involving, and especially with this kind of technology where you can bring in people very easily. I'd like to be able to bring in guest, participants from Germany, and so that, like for instance, I have a colleague of mine in French who uses the Google Hangouts to invite students from France to participate with students here at Penn to talk about topics that are relevant to students worldwide. So this is something that I would like to consider doing. However, that's not a bad idea. That's a very good suggestion to bring in the intermediate students. I will say this though, one summer I had a tutor who was an advanced speaker of German, and I was very lucky to have this tutor who worked with the students on a weekly basis. The students could arrange times with him when it was convenient for him and for them, and they were able to practice. This was extra practice. I unfortunately didn't have that last year. Who knows, maybe I might be able to get one this year, but it always is a question of funding.
Sergio says, given the bring your own device and students using their iPads, laptops, and so on in in-person classrooms, what are the learning points that you think that we could take? He goes on to specify, we could apply from online learning for in-person classrooms.
Right. Well, students can bring their iPads and their laptops. However, and I used to conduct some of these classes in a lab where there were computers already in the lab. And so some of the things that I'm talking to you about now, where I had these chat windows open, the students could also do that same type of activity if they have computers, and if they have the computers and you had a large screen, then the students could be looking at a large screen and seeing everybody's input at the same time. The problem that I encountered with that is that there was always some issues with getting started. Some students didn't have their logins and those type of things. So I abandoned the lab and I concentrated on the classroom. But you can do a couple of these anyway. Some of these activities in a live classroom. In a face-to-face classroom, I should say, because a live classroom can also be online. But what I'm trying to do now in the face-to-face classroom is to look at how much the students are practicing the language in the classroom. I've always sort of thought of myself as being a very communicative language teacher, but now what I'm looking at here is how can I improve that, and so that you saw this sort of cycle that I was showing a little earlier. I try to duplicate that in many ways now in the classroom, so that the final activities, we're always talking and interacting with each other and speaking, but the final activities in the classroom are the students going around the room, walking around the room, and looking for new speaking partners and chatting with each other about the topics that we were just practicing in class. So the goal here is basically for me right now is how do I increase the usage of the language, the way in which I experience the sort of the amount of usage of the language in the online classroom.
Ed asks, can you offer sources for teachers to work with for online delivery?
Well, at the moment, we actually had a symposium. We have a symposium every year now. We've been doing for the past 2 years, I should say, on online teaching. And last year we did a workshop on online, how to teach online. Now, we're also considering doing webinars for doing online teaching as well. So at the moment, I don't have. You might also look at Calico. The Calico conference is one venue for learning more about online teaching. The IELT conference that also takes place, IALLT. They also have workshops and a lot of presentations, very good presentations by leaders in the field on online education. So there's these organizations, Calico and IELT, if you're familiar with them. They have conferences yearly or biannually, and you can participate in their conferences and workshops. And again, we're playing with the idea of putting together online workshops for online teaching, because right now, we're basically going through training our own teachers, but face-to-face and online, and we are hoping perhaps soon to be able to offer such a workshop to people who are not on campus, who are not Penn teachers.
Marco mentioned it's really clever to use Facebook because that's the way students can have something of their own, considering Blackboard and Adobe Connect are tools from the classroom and Facebook is a tool of the students. TN says, you mentioned in Adobe Connect, you put students in a group and make feedback while they are writing and give feedback while they are writing.
Yes.
Did your students hear your comments as you were speaking, even though you are not speaking to them? Did they find it distracting when they were chatting or discussing because you're talking to other students?
No, I don't find them feeling that it's a distraction. I think they, at least they indicate they appreciate the feedback that I give them. So if John is making, is struggling with a form or has used an incorrect form, I will tell John that he might think about what the correct form is, and normally the students will say thank you. They'll say danke. So as it may sound like it is distracting, but I haven't gotten any feedback from the students that it is distracting. So I like the idea of being able to give them feedback as their conversations are progressing, rather than waiting till the very end. So that's a good question, but I haven't found at this point that it is distracting.
Mohammed asked, what about learning style? Do you consider students who learn visually versus other students who learn in different styles?
You mean in terms of visually being able to see each other? Well, I will tell you this. In most cases, the students who start with the course continue with the course, but I know that there are students who might be more visual. And I had last semester a student after the first week say, this is not the way in which I, take a language course. I think I prefer to do it in the face-to-face. So the students have the option, to continue, but as from the feedback based on the students, that the online environment is for many, the environment in which they seem to thrive in. And to give you an example, I had a student who took the first semester in 2012 and said, I was just trying this out. I just want to see how this is, what this online teaching is all about. And he said, but I don't think I'm going to have time to do it in the second session. Well, he did find time to do it in the second session, finished the sequence, the first elementary sequence, went on to the intermediate level, finished that entire sequence, and applied for a scholarship to go to Germany through the DAAD. And it was in Germany for 9 months. So I know that there are certain students who probably require more of a visual presence, but my feeling is because of the amount of participation that goes on here, and again, what I think is interesting to me is the social presence that the students are developing in the online environment. Sort of balances off the lack of the physical presence. So if they can get beyond that, then I think they're going to appreciate the language experience that they're having online. But it's a very good question, and also a question I think that needs research.
I think that's all the questions that we have for now.
Well, I want to thank everybody for their questions and their participation, patience. And if you have any specific questions that you'd like to send me, you can also contact me by email. I don't know if you saw my email at the very beginning, but please feel free to contact me.
Thank you so much. Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Dixon, for the wonderful presentation. Again, we are very glad that everyone could join us for this event. Our webinar today is recorded, so if you didn't get Professor Dixon's email, it will be listed on the presentation and available to everyone. Again, you can always reach out to me too and contact me if you require any additional information. I wanted to let you know that our May Symposium is going to feature Dr. Thomas Holt in a discussion quite differently about cybercrime and the social world of computer hackers. So that'll be something different for everyone to watch. Thanks again, and we hope to see you at another upcoming event. If you have any questions, again, feel free to contact either me or Dr. Dixon. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.